Hello dear students. I think you are enjoying the classes that are occurring on immunology, and immunology is a new topic that has been added in your curriculum. In the immunology syllabus, today's topic, that is the generation of antibody diversity, this is one of the most interesting but also one of the most difficult and one of the most complex topics. So what I will do today, that we'll discuss how the immense diversity of the antibodies are generated. We'll discuss that. But what I'll try to do is I'll discuss it more in a basic manner to give you an overall idea about how the antibody diversity is generated. The process, which is very, very complex, I'll give a little bit of in-depth and detailed mechanism of that. But what I want you to remember at least is the overall basic structure of how this antibody diversity is generated, and the detailed information, as much as you can remember, that is okay. But the overall idea, if you can get in your head, that is more or less okay. So what is antibody diversity? You know the classes on antigens and epitopes and antibodies. What are antigens, what are epitopes? These things have been discussed. So you have an idea that there are millions and millions of possible antigens and epitopes. There are many, many of them. And so for each one of them, there is a potential antibody that can be produced. So obviously, the amount of antibody that our body can potentially generate against millions of antigens is again millions. So millions and millions of antibodies can potentially be generated by our immune system. So this great diversification, this great diversity is known as the antigen diversity. Now, a basic concept that we have about the biology is that one gene, one protein concept, that we think that each protein will be synthesized from one gene will generate one protein. So immunoglobulins are also proteins. So if we go by that concept, then obviously to generate millions and millions of antibodies, we need to have millions and millions of genes. But is it possible? Obviously no, because in our entire human genome, the number of genes are around 40 to maybe 50,000. It's much less than even 1 lakh, that is around say 10 to the power 5. And again, that all the genes are not only for immunoglobulins, there are many other proteins. You have enzymes, you have structural proteins, you have many other types of proteins. But the number of immunoglobulins that can be produced, that is huge. The potential is around 10 to the power 10 at that level. But you see, the number of genes are even lesser than 10 to the power 5. So how is this possible? So obviously, we have been thinking about this and we are thinking that this is not possible to be explained simply by the one gene, one protein idea. So how does it happen? That is the mechanism that we are going to discuss today. So the first that we got a clear idea about how this happens is when a Japanese American scientist, Dr. Tonegawa, in the Department of Biology of MIT, he found an evidence that there are separate gene segments for the immunoglobulin gene cluster. There are specific gene clusters for the immunoglobulin genes. And you already have an idea about the structure of the immunoglobulins, where there are variable regions which actually vary and which determine how a particular antibody binds with an antigen, that is the variable region, and then you have a constant region. So we'll come to that again. So the variable region, there are different gene segments that can rearrange between themselves. So this is at the center of the idea of how the immunoglobulin diversity is generated. So we will discuss that. And obviously he got a Nobel Prize for that within 10 years of his discovery. So that you can consider to be pretty quick. So to understand the antibody diversity generation, I would like you to understand this very basic flow of events or flow of concepts. That is, there are multiple gene organization, there is multiple regions or segments of genes that are organized in the immunoglobulin genes. And these, the variable regions of these genes, because it is the variable regions of immunoglobulin that identify the epitope. Now the variable regions of these genes, they rearrange between themselves. The segments can be V, J and maybe D. So I'll come to that. And then these segments, they rearrange between themselves in a particular molecular biology process which is known as recombination. Okay. So to summarize, till now the overall different mechanisms that we know, that has been discovered till now, that are known to be involved in generation of the diversity of antibodies are seven different mechanisms. So first point is there are multiple germline genes. There are multiple genes, multiple gene segments. Then the point number 2 is they combine in specific rearrangement. The combinatorial rearrangement of the segments, that is V, D and J. These segments, they combine between themselves. Then the H and the L chain, the heavy and the light chain, this combination occurs separately in both, in heavy chain and in the light chain. And then the heavy chain and light chain, they combine between themselves. And then there are some other mechanisms like N region nucleotide addition, P region nucleotide addition, junctional flexibility and the somatic hypermutation. So among them, these first three, this one and this one, these are the main 3 points that I want you to remember. That is, there are multiple gene line segments, and these segments separately for heavy chain and light chain, they combine through recombination. The VJ or VDJ segments, will come to it. And then there are some minor points. These 3 points you need to remember and understand in more in depth. And then these points, that N nucleotide addition, P nucleotide addition, junctional flexibility and somatic hypermutation, I'll discuss them, but you may remember them in less detail. Okay. So now let us come to the structure of the immunoglobulin. This I think have been discussed. You know this. The structure of the immunoglobulin, it has been discussed. So the basic structure, I think you all know that there are 2 chains. One is the heavy chain and another one is the light chain. So there are 2 light chains. These are the light chains. This is the light chain and this is another light chain. So these are the 2 light chains, and then there are 2 heavy chains. This is one heavy chain and this is another heavy chain. Okay. So in each heavy chain and light chain, there are variable regions. Okay. There are variable regions. So this is the variable region. These are the variable regions. So this is the variable region of the light chain. This is the variable region of the light chain. This is the variable region of the heavy chain. So these are the variable regions of the heavy chains. And then you have the constant region. So this is the constant region of the light chain, and these are the constant region of the heavy chains. Now all the diversity of the antibody that is responsible for specifically identifying these specific epitopes of an antigen, they reside in these variable regions, be it light chain, be it heavy chain. So this is the basic concept, I think you all know. So this variability, we are trying to understand how such a huge variability occurs. Okay. Now let us come to the some light chain. So you know that again, one thing you know, that in the light chains, the light chains can be of 2 types, that is kappa light chain or lambda light chain, that you know. So let us first come to the kappa chain gene family. So what happens in the kappa light chain gene family? So the first thing you need to understand that there are specific gene segments, as I said. So here there are 2 particular segments that will form the variable region. So what are they? The V segment and the J segment. There are 40 different segments in the V region of the kappa gene. 40 different. So you may have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 40 different segments of V region in the kappa gene family. And for the J region, there are 5 such region in the J family. And the constant region, there is only one gene in the constant region, producing the constant region of the kappa chain in the kappa gene family. Okay, so 40 for the variable region, then the J region or the joining region, it has 5 different genes, and then there is constant region, there is only one gene. Now the variable region of the immunoglobulin, as you have seen or as I have said previously, will be produced by the V and J. They will produce the variable region, okay, that will bind with the epitope, and the constant region is fixed. Okay, now in the lambda gene family, the same thing, the overall organization is same, only in the lambda gene family the variable region will have 31 different types of V genes, the J region will have 4 different types of J genes, and the constant region can also have 7 different types of C genes. Okay, so these are the different types of gene segments that you have in kappa and the lambda, that is the light chains of immunoglobulins. Similar organization in the heavy chain gene family, but it is even more complex. So the variable region of the heavy chain will be formed not by 2 V and J like in case of light chains, but in heavy chain there will be 3 different segments, that is the V, D and J. 3 different segments will recombine between themselves, and then it will form the variable region. So the V region has 51 different types of genes. So V, it will have, so the V will have 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. It will have like this. In this region it will have up to 51, 1 to 51. Then there is the J region which will have 6 different genes, and then in the for the heavy chain there is an extra segment, that is the D segment, which will also have 27 different genes. And the constant region, this is very, very interesting for the heavy chains. In the heavy chains, the constant regions are total 18 number. Now you know the type of immunoglobulin. There are 5 types of immunoglobulins, you know. The 5 types are immunoglobulin M, immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin D, immunoglobulin E and immunoglobulin A. Now what kind of immunoglobulin it is, you know, it depends on the what kind of heavy chain is present there. Now we know even more that it depends on what constant region is present in that heavy chain. So the 7 different constant region genes are C mu, C delta. There are 4 C gamma genes, that is C gamma 3, C gamma 1, C gamma 2b and 2a, then C epsilon and C alpha. So if the constant region that binds is C mu, then the heavy chain is C mu. Constant region is C mu, then the heavy chain will be mu heavy chain, mu type heavy chain. And then your immunoglobulin is immunoglobulin M. Similarly, your constant region, if it is C delta, then the heavy chain will be delta heavy chain, and your immunoglobulin will be immunoglobulin type D. Similarly, any of the gamma constant region will form gamma heavy chain, and that will form immunoglobulin G. And epsilon for immunoglobulin E and alpha for immunoglobulin A. So this is even more clarification of how different classes of immunoglobulin, the different 5 classes of immunoglobulins are formed. Okay. So now what happens, we have seen that different types of genes are there, V, J for light chain and V, D, J for the heavy chains. Now what is happening, one from each segment. So for light chain, one from the V segment, one from the J segment. They will recombine together to form the variable region, and that will recombine with any of the C region. So that together will produce a mature light chain. Similarly, for the heavy chain, there will be one from V, anyone from D, anyone from J, and that will finally bind with any particular type of C. So this is the recombination that is occurring, and that will finally again produce a specific type of heavy chain, and then they will again recombine a specific type of light chain and specific type of heavy chain. They will recombine. So you can already understand the mathematics how it is going to play out. So a huge number of possible combinations you are already getting. Now some of the enzymes that are involved I have just named here, RAG1 and 2, TDT, etc. I will come to it later. Okay. So let us first see how the recombination is occurring in the light chain genes. So this is the same thing that I have said, that one from the, so let us say the kappa gene. Kappa chain, one of the kappa light chain is produced how? So one from the any of the 40 V kappa region, one any from the 5 of the J kappa region, and then they will combine, and that will bind to the C kappa. There is only one constant gene for the kappa chain. So they will together form one particular mature kappa light chain, and that will come to be ultimately translated to a mature kappa light chain protein. Okay, so this is how it is playing out. So see here. So say these are the 40 different kappa V genes, V kappa. These are the 5 different possibilities of the J kappa, and this is the only C kappa. So what is happening? Any one of the V kappa regions, say this one, the 23 of the 40 genes, this is combining with this 4th one of the J chain. So what is happening? This one and this one are brought together. So everything else in between here and here, everything is cut off. So they are rearranged in this manner that this is my target V kappa region and J kappa region. They are binding together. And then finally the primary RNA is produced. Now see, the C region is binding with the VJ recombination. Finally the C is joining during the post-transcriptional modification of the primary RNA transcript. You know, this is the splicing. So this area is spliced out. We have read how splicing occurs. So these two, V region and J region, they are joining together by the recombination at the DNA level. Then the primary RNA is produced, and the C kappa is binding with anything that is in between these, that is removed as intron splicing. And then finally you have a mature mRNA. This is your mature mRNA that has all the regions, that is the specific V region, that is this one, a specific J region, that is this one, and a constant region. Here only one constant region, but again in other cases the constant regions may also vary. So this is how this recombination is taking place. Okay. Now similar, so same thing will happen with lambda chain also. Now with heavy chain, the only difference is the V and J and D will first recombine, and that will form the variable region, and then that will recombine with the C region. Okay. So how it is happening? Again, the basic principle is same. Look here. So these are the V region genes, these are the D that is in between, and these are the J regions. Here what happens? The D region and J region, they combine together first. So say this is the D region and this is the J. So these two combine first. So these two are combining first. Then with the recombination of the DJ, the form that we have now, with that a specific V. So here this V gene, this is now recombining here. And now we have our primary transcript. Now we have our primary transcript. And the C region, there are 8 possible C regions. The C regions come. And finally the intron splicing, the splicing of intron will produce a mature gene. A mature mRNA, sorry. Now see here, the interesting thing is, if the constant region here is like mu C region, then the final heavy chain is mu heavy chain, and this will go to produce immunoglobulin M. On the other hand, if your constant region is C delta, then the final product that you produce is the delta heavy chain, and then your immunoglobulin will be immunoglobulin D. So this is how the recombination of the heavy chain. So for light chain, the V and J recombine then with the C. So by that method you get a particular recombination form of the light chain, be it kappa, be it delta, be it lambda. And from the heavy chain also, the V, D, J, they recombine D and J first, then with V, and then it produces the variable region, and then by post-transcriptional modification, intron splicing, a particular C binds and a specific heavy chain. So you have a specific light chain, you have a specific heavy chain, and they two now recombine, or they two come together to form a mature immunoglobulin protein molecule. Okay. So how this recombination occurs? So what I am trying to say is, say this one, this region, the V region 23 and the J region 4, these two are coming together, and how these two, which are far apart from each other, how they are coming together and joining with each other. What is the mechanism? So this mechanism I'll discuss in little bit of detail. So the basic concept of what is happening, that I have already discussed. If you understand that and can remember that, that is more or less sufficient. But the mechanism is also very interesting. I'll discuss it not in very detail, but just little bit. If anybody is interested for that, if you can remember very well. Okay, so what is happening? Say this is my V region. So this is my V region, that V23 kappa, V kappa 23 that we were seeing. And this is the J region, J kappa 23. And there is a large region inside that. We have seen there a large portion of gene is separating these two. So what will happen? These two genes, they will be brought near each other by the rest of the DNA is by folding like this. So you have a long chain. You have folded that chain in a manner so that this region and this region now comes very near each other. So you have a long chain. So these two regions were apart from each other. Now we have folded it in a manner so that these two which were apart from each other have come close to each other. Okay, so these two areas have come, and these the flanking regions. So this is the gene, this is my gene, this is my gene. So these two have to be joined together. So how do we know which area to join? These regions which are not part of the gene but the flanking region, just region which flank together. So they will brought each other together. Okay. So now what is happening? These two regions come near each other, and then those two. So this part, as you have seen, so this was attached to here, and this was attached to here. Now this area is cut. So here is a cut made, and here is a cut made. So these cuts are typically like the double strand break. In the DNA repair mechanism and the DNA damage, you have seen that what is known as double strand break. That is, if this is your DNA, if you cut through and through, this is known as double strand break. So that the DNA is broken like this, double strand break. So you make a double strand break here, you make a double strand break here. And this double strand break, like cleavage, is done by a particular group of enzymes known as RAG, recombination activating genes. It is named from the genes. The proteins are the enzymes. So RAG1 and RAG2, these are the two enzymes that are products of the RAG1 and RAG2 genes that will cut them. And not only they will cut them, another interesting thing will happen. There is you can see a hairpin like structure is formed in both these cases. So also hairpin like structures are formed, as you can see. Okay. So next what happens? Now these regions, they join together. These hairpin like structures are removed. P nucleotide and N nucleotide addition happens. About this I will little bit in detail I will tell later. And then finally, so you have this region and this region which were far apart. So you have brought them together. Then here you have made a double strand break. Here you have made a double strand break. And these two double strand break regions are now brought together. Whatever was in between has been removed. They are brought together. And these two double strand breaks are now finally, after P nucleotide, N nucleotide, etc. addition, these two double strand break regions are joined. These two regions are finally joined. So this gene and this gene, which were far apart, they were brought together, made a double strand cut here, double strand cut here. So the extra region is removed. They two brought together and joined. Okay, this is they are two joined. And how they are joined? By the simple usual double strand break repair system. So we have studied the double strand break repair system, which is one of the very important DNA repair system. So by that method, these two are joined. So this is overall how this recombination takes place. Okay. So mathematically speaking, let us understand what are the different possible combinations that are possible. Now see, for heavy chain there are 51 different V regions, 27 different D and 6 different J regions. So as we have already said that how they recombine, any one of the 51 from V, any one segment from here and any one segment from J. So they will recombine to produce one particular variable region. Okay. So the variable, now here see I am not bringing the C region because C region does not contribute to the variability and does not contribute to the epitope binding. So we are only confined to the variable region genes. So any one from 51 of V, any one from the 27 of D and any one from the 6 of the J regions in heavy chain. So what are the total number of possible combinations? 8262. Now for kappa and lambda, the light chains, there are no D regions, so only V and J regions. So again the possible combinations for kappa are 200 and for lambda you can see 120. Now again, any one of these 8262 heavy chains can bind with any one of the kappa chains or any one of the lambda chains. So in each immunoglobulin, the kappa chain and the lambda chains, either there will be kappa chains or there will be lambda chains, not both. So again the recombination is anyone from here and anyone from here or anyone from here. So the total number of combination, as you can see, becomes 8262 into 200 into 120. And so the overall combination becomes, now see, 2.64 into 10 to the power 6. So already we have a huge number of possible combinations. The total number of gene segments you can see is very little. The total number of gene segments are very little. It is around 160. But the possible combinations you can already see is 2.64 into 10 to the power 6. So it is in the 10 to the power 6, that level. But still you understand the number of variability in the antibodies, that is around 10 to the power 10. So still we are far away from this. So there must be much more variability and some more mechanisms that is involving the variability. So as in the first list that I have shown you, there are, what are the other possibilities? The P nucleotide and N nucleotide addition that was happening before. They also involve some of the, they also can contribute to some of the variability. Okay, so how that is happening? So how is P nucleotide? So what I want to tell you is, if you remember these names and what is happening and the overall idea about P nucleotide, N nucleotide, etc., that is more or less sufficient. But I am giving you a very brief idea about what is happening here. If you can remember it, then nothing like it. Okay, so what is happening? Say in the VJ or VDJ addition, you have seen in the previous slides, we have shown that there is a double strand cut and a hairpin like structure is formed. When the RAG1 and RAG2 cuts them, a hairpin like structure is formed. Now what happens if there is a hairpin like structure formed? The hairpin is finally cut by a single strand endonuclease, and that forms a complementary. Let us see the picture, then it will be clear. So the hairpin like structure you can see, and now it is cut in a specific region, and that region can vary. So it say it is cutting here and here. So if the single strand cut is made here, so you get a sequence like this, and these sequences then now complementary sequences are formed. So complementary for this is this, and complementary for this is this. So these two complementary structures are formed, and since it was a hairpin structure which was already self-complementary, so to the overall structure, if you make another complementary, then you can see this segment and this segment becomes palindromic. You know palindromic if you see it from both ends. So TCGA, TCGA, AT-AT, AT-AT. In the opposite direction, they are palindromic. So such palindromic sequences are formed, and that is why this is known as P nucleotide, palindromic. So P nucleotide. Now why the variability? Because the single strand endonuclease is cutting at what position, that may vary. So that may vary, and accordingly this palindromic sequence will also vary. So as the DNA segment sequence is varying, the final mRNA and the protein nucleotide, protein amino acid sequence, that will, if the nucleotide sequence vary, the amino acid sequence will also vary. So that will also produce some variability in the final protein product. So this is how P nucleotide addition acts. So how it generates diversity? Because the hairpin is cut at variable region. So depending on where it is cut, the final sequence little bit difference, but that difference may also produce difference in the amino acids. Okay, then there is an N nucleotide addition. What is that? Here an enzyme known as terminal deoxynucleotidyl transferase, TDT. This can add more nucleotides. How many? Around up to 15 nucleotides. So what is happening in the diagram? Let us see. So this is the N nucleotide addition. Here this is the N nucleotide addition. You can see this is the N nucleotide addition. The hairpin is cut and the N nucleotide addition that we have already discussed. This is the N nucleotide addition. But apart from that, randomly some more nucleotides randomly can be added by an enzyme known as TDT, terminal deoxynucleotide transferase. Okay. So here, so how many? up to 15. Now the thing is, if up to 15 nucleotides are added, so see here. So if up to 15 nucleotides are added, so how many amino acids can be added? 5 more amino acids can be added. So this can be randomly any nucleotide sequence. So randomly any 5 amino acid sequence can be changed. Or it may not be 5, maybe 3, maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe 4. So again there is huge possibility of your sequence diversity. So this P and N nucleotide that is added before they are finally joined by the double strand break repair system, these nucleotides that are added, they now add further to diversity. We have seen the diversity at the 10 to the power 6 level. Now for each of the 10 to the power 6, now you have still even more and more options with P and N nucleotide addition. So that adds to the diversity. Okay. Then there is another thing, that is the junctional diversity. So while the double strand breaks are joined, so at exactly which region they are joining, that can also vary. The precise location of the joining is again vary. So it is an imprecise recombination, and this imprecision is actually helping us making it more diverse. Okay, so see this diagram. So say first, for example, let us take the example of the 3, this combination 3, cutting here, this region is joined with this region. So this region and this region are being joined. So in the 3, see what is the option? Here this will be GAG, then GAT, and then it will be cut and joined to this region. So then it will go to TGG, ACT and AGG like this. So the amino acid sequence will be like this. Then instead of joining here, if we join by the second way here, if we cut it here and join it, if we say, let me use a different color, if we cut it here and join it, the second combination is here. So if we join it here, just one nucleotide this side and that side, so the combination changes. So here this will be up to one more nucleotide, so GAG, GAT, then G. So here it was after T it was joining, but here it is going up to G from this part, and from this part it is starting from the after the T, so it is starting from here, you can see the GG, not from TGG, it is starting from GG. So ultimately in your product, what you are getting, in this region one particular codon is changing. Here it is TGG, this is GGG, and as a result the amino acid is also changing. So this leads to diversity. So not only that, the different possibilities, not all of them may be productive. Some of the possibilities, say 4 and 5, that has been shown here. The possibility of that has been shown as, say 4 and 5, say this is 4th, this one, or 5th, this one. How this goes? Say the 4th one, here the sequence becomes like this. You can just try it out and draw it out. Here you get a TAG. So in the DNA you get a TAG. So if you get a TAG in the DNA, then in your RNA you will get its complementary, that is UGA. And you know UGA is a stop codon. So you get a UGA stop codon, and this product, this mRNA will not give you a very productive protein. So the junctional diversity may produce many diverse forms. Not only that, some of the forms may be non-productive. They will not ultimately give you any final protein product. Okay. So, and finally after all this, the H chain and L chain, they recombine. That math we have already shown, but that happens actually later. So what happens? The different gene regions, the V, J, maybe D, they join, then C, they join, and how they join? They join with P nucleotide, N nucleotide addition and junctional diversity, and finally you get one light chain, and with all those methods again you finally get one heavy chain, and they recombine. So their recombination again gives another more power to the combinatorial diversity. And after including all these, then if you consider the N and P and junctional diversity, then that 10 to the power 6, that diversity now increases even more. Okay, but that's not all. There is another particular way of producing even more diversity. Now all these diversifying mechanisms are occurring during the maturation of B cell. So once a B cell is maturing, all these processes are occurring, and in one particular type of B cells, the recombination will produce, once it is maturing in the bone marrow, B cells, you know, it comes from the bone marrow. So while the antibody gene is maturing in one particular set of bone marrow, one particular set of B cells, one very specific combination of VJD, VD and VJ and the light chain and heavy chain, and one very specific type of immunoglobulin will be produced. So once a B cell after maturation comes out into the blood, it will have only and only one very, very specific type of antibody, and that will identify very, very specifically, uniquely to one specific epitope of antigen. And that particular set of bone marrow B cell that is coming out from bone marrow, this is known as one particular clone of B cell. One particular clone of B cell. So why I'm emphasizing this? Because in the next class we will discuss the monoclonal antibody. So you have to get an idea. So what is this? That all these recombinations are occurring, different recombinations in different B cells while they are maturing. So once it matures, it will have only one particular combination and one particular type of very, very unique and specific antibody. Okay. Now then there is another type of variability that can occur, that is known as somatic hypermutation. You know, mutation occurs in genes, in DNA all the time, but most of the mutations we correct. But here is an example where mutation is a good thing, because more mutation is occurring, more variability is occurring. In fact, in the B cells while they are maturing, the rate of mutation, as you can see, the rate of mutation here is 1 lakh times more than usual spontaneous mutation. Here the rate of mutation is much, much more. 1 mutation per every 2 cell division. That cannot be acceptable in any other genes. In any other cells, any other genes, you cannot accept that much of mutation, because the cell will die, the protein will not be good. But here what you want, there may be more and more mutation, more and more variability, and the final product of the protein will be even more diverse. Okay, so not only the V, J, D, these, you have 40, 31, etc. type of genes, but each of the 40 genes, they are spontaneously going through different types of mutations, and they can produce even more variability. So that is the interesting thing. Okay, so what is happening? The exact mechanism of somatic hypermutation is still not very well known. This is a very hot topic of research now. But what we know, that the mutation that occurs usually is substitution mutation. Okay, not insertion or deletion mutation. I think you all know about the different types of mutations. Now, so more the B cell exposed to specific antigens, the specific particular mutated form of a specific kind of that may be selected. The thing is, for each mutation there is again change in the amino acid sequence, and a very specific type of antibody may be produced. So with all these particulars, so to summarize this, you know, all these different types of mechanisms, the 7 mechanisms, they together, when you take all of them, now you get your diversity to the 10 to the power 10 level. So you have very few genes, but the total products they can produce is in a huge number. So the most important things that I want you to again understand and remember and get the concept about overall how it is happening is this. There are multiple germline gene segments, V, D and J segments. They join through recombination, the V, D, J segments, they recombine, and there is some minor things, that is P addition, N addition, junctional flexibility, but finally a specific lambda and a specific kappa, or a specific lambda or kappa and a specific heavy chain is formed, and then the heavy chain and the light chain, they combine again in any possible combination. So these three concepts, they taken together is the basic structure of the genetic recombination that produce the variation. This thing you need to understand, and just remember the names P addition, N addition, junctional flexibility, etc. If you can remember more, then it's very good. And little bit about the somatic hypermutation that may also occur. So this is an overall concept of how, I think you got an overall basic idea about how with so many little number of genes we can produce so huge number of millions and millions of different possible unique antibodies in our B cells. Okay, Now finally, one small topic, that is class switching. So there are different classes of immunoglobulins, IgM, IgG, IgA, IgD, etc. Now the specificity to the antibody, the variability that I was discussing, that does not depend on the class, that depends on the variable region. The class depends on the constant region of the heavy chain, as we have already discussed. So one particular cell, mature B cell, that can produce different kinds of, different classes of immunoglobulins. It may produce immunoglobulin G or A or M or E, depending on what situation it is, depending on what are the conditions that it is in. And even if you change the condition, if you change the situation, then the same B cell may switch the class, which was producing an IgM may now produce IgG. But the specificity will be same. So one monoclonal cells, one particular clone of B cell, which has been fixed during maturation to produce one particular combination of specific heavy and light chain and producing a specific type of immunoglobulin. It will produce a very unique immunoglobulin. The variable region will be unique, it will be fixed, but the constant region can switch depending on the situation, and the class of antibody that it produces can again switch. So what is the signal that helps it switching? There are many conditions and signals, but what I need you to remember at least one point, that is one of the most important signal for determining what particular class is being produced, or now you know what particular constant region of the heavy chains comes during the formation, that is dependent on this type of molecule. This is known as cytokines. So I've given you two examples. Say if the cytokine that is stimulating the B cell, if that cytokine is interferon gamma, then it will produce a particular type of immunoglobulin, that is IgG2. You know there are 4 different constant regions for the immunoglobulin gene, for the gamma region. For the gamma constant region, there are 4 genes, so it can produce IgG2. On the other hand, instead of interferon gamma, if your cytokine stimulation is interleukin B, then the same B cell with same variable region, the same epitope specificity, it will switch its class, and the constant region will be changed from an IgG2 type immunoglobulin to IgG4 type, or more importantly to IgE. So it can switch to constant region epsilon. So it will produce a epsilon heavy chain and it will produce immunoglobulin E. So a specific B cell, one B cell which is specific, producing one clone of antibody, monoclonal antibody, but its class can change depending on whatever is the different types of signals and stimulants and situations. So with this, I think we have an overall idea about how the immunoglobulin diversity is made, and a little bit of idea about how the class switching takes place. Thank you.